Okay.
So welcome to the class. This class will primarily focus on this week's parsha, Tzvaye, and we'll make a connection to something which will happen in next week's parsha. Our parsha, this week's parsha, Tzvaye, is a parsha that has a bit of a surprise to it. What exactly is that surprise? That surprise is that this parsha is considered the only parsha in which Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not explicitly mentioned. That is to say, that the Sefer Bereshis, obviously Bereshis, Noach, Lech Lecha, etc., they don't contain Moshe's name either, because that part of the Chumash deals with the period before his birth. And also there are some parshas at the end of the Chumash in Sefer Devarim. They do not mention his name either. But since that parshas, because the book of Devarim opens up by saying, these are the words that Moshe spoke, it's as if his name is mentioned entirely through that entire Chumash. But from Parsha Shmos, from the book of Shmos, until the end of Sefer Bamidbar, Parsha Tzvaye is the only parsha in which Moshe's name is omitted. This idea is pointed out by a number of Mefarshim, and we're going to look at one. So I'm going to share the screen for the moment for just to show us a couple of lines of the Chumash. Okay, you should be able to see the opening of the words of the parsha. It says, "Va'ata Tzvaye is Bnei Yisrael." Hashem says, "You shall instruct the Bnei Yisrael, v'yikra elecha, and they should bring to you Shemen Zayah, Zach, Kosis, Lamoir, La'alas, Ner Tomid, to bring you the oil of beaten oil for lighting, for kindling lamps regularly." Now we're going to look at the Meforish on the side. This is the Kitzur Balaturim, who says that the idea of you shall command, the idea is who is Ba'ato. The pasuk starts Ba'ato Tzvaye, who is the you? You shall command. This refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the commentary that the Balaturim brings, and he says, this is the only parsha in the Torah since Moshe first appears in which he is not mentioned. Of course, outside of the book of Devarim, which we mentioned before. And this is a fulfillment of the curse that he proclaims against himself in next week's parsha, where it speaks about the sin of the golden calf and Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu in wanting to wipe out the negative influence that could be to the Bnei Israel, that Hashem says he wants to destroy the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you're going to do something, if not, blot me out from your book. Blot me out from your book, and therefore don't do it. Hashem reconsiders and forgives the Jewish people. But as we continue, although this curse was conditional upon a God's refusal to forgive the people, because it starts off with the if not, right? So it was conditional. And therefore, once Hashem had forgiven the Jewish people of the sin of the calf, should be that the curse falls away. But as the Balaturim says and continues to say, due to the curse of a scholar, the holiness and the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, since he had mentioned something, so as he continues, since the curse of a scholar is fulfilled in some sort of way, even if it's made conditionally, therefore it's fulfilled in some sort of sense. In what sense was it fulfilled? It was fulfilled in the sense that his name is not mentioned in this parsha. So therefore, we have got one answer, which tells us the reason why his name is not mentioned is because it's a fulfillment of the curse of the idea that the Jewish people should be negative happen to them, and because it's the curse of a tzaddik, it's fulfilled in some sort of way. So his name is not mentioned. Well, looking a little bit further, we have to see if that's actually what happens. The parsha, it mentions Moshe, but in a hidden way. After all, it does say Va'ato, so that's a reference to Moshe, but it doesn't name him explicitly. Again, so we can understand that he was not mentioned, he was taken out of the parsha, and this curse was fulfilled in this sort of way. But we can ask the question, why precisely this parsha? Why parsha Tzvaye? The event of the idea of blot me out, it happens in next week's parsha. So why is his name blotted out in this week's parsha? Another reason that's given is because this parsha occurs in proximity to the day of Moshe's passing, which is Zayin Adar. We've had it this week, 2 days ago. Zayin Adar, the day of Moshe's passing. So although Moshe's Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned clearly, although hinted at in this parsha, another book, another sefer, explains that in fact his name is hinted very strongly in another way, but hinted in a hidden manner. The Megala Amukas explains that if you write the name of Moshe, spelled as we know, Mem, She, and Hey, but if we write it in a fuller sense, that is to say, if we write what's called in a format of miluya, it means filled. That is to say, if we utilize the letters, how we vocalize, how we enunciate the letter. For example, the letter Aleph, it can be written with a Aleph, Lamed Pei, and if you would read that letter, if you would read that word, Aleph, Lamed Pei, you would come to Aleph, right? So in a similar sense, Moshe Rabbeinu's name starts with a Mem, and if you write it out in full, it really would be Mem, She, and Hey. That is, his name is Mem, She, and Hey, and the milui of the letter Mem is a final Mem, right? So that is the letter, an extra letter Mem, which the numerical value of that is 40. We call that a gematria. The milui of the letter Shein consists of a Yud and a Nun, Shein, Yud, Nun. Now, if you take that milui letters, the Yud and the Nun, that also equals 60. And if we take the milui of the letter of Hey, which is the extra Aleph, that is an extra letter of its Hey Aleph. That's, you take the Aleph and you add those numbers together. So we said the final Mem of the letter Mem, which is 40, the idea of the Yud Nun of Shein, which equals 60, we're up to 100, 40 and 60, and the Milui of the letter of the letter Hey, which is an Aleph, that's 1, that totals 101. What is 101 in our parsha? It turns out that the number of verses, the number of psukim in the parsha is 101. That is to say, Moshe's name is not visible in Parshas Tzvaye, but Moshe's hidden name is embedded in the parsha. So it's not that Moshe Rabbeinu is taken out, he's just not revealed strongly in the parsha. Interesting. It's an interesting idea, and how we've connected it to this week's parsha and to the locale of the day. But since we're talking about hidden ideas, what is signified by the idea that Moshe's revealed name does not appear in Parshat Tzvaye, while his hidden name does? What does that show us? What does that mean to us? We can understand and examine Moshe's name. How was Moshe given a name? The Medrash tells us that Moshe, when he was born, obviously was given a Jewish name. But the name that we know and that we're told and the appellation that we call Moshe was given to him by Bas Pharaoh, the daughter of Pharaoh. And he was given that name because she drew him out of the water, Mishasihu, and that's how he got the name Moshe. What's so special about this idea that he is named Mishasihu and Moshe, and that he is known throughout the whole of Torah and by all the Jews until the end of time by the name of Moshe? How is it that he has this name? In the realm of the Pnimius of Torah, in the inner parts of Torah, as expounded by Hasidus, it explains an idea of the differential between a land and sea. What is the differential between land and a sea? Dry land represents a level of revelation that's easily seen. It's revealed. It's a level just like I can see produce growing on the land. I can see animals walking the land. I can see trees. I can see mountains. These things are visible. So dry land, land itself, represents a revealed, openly seen, visible area. What's the sea in contrast to this concept? The sea represents a concealed level, just like water creatures are easily concealed by the water. We know they're there, we know objects are there, and in fact, we know that there are mountains and hills and vegetation there, but they're not obviously visible to us. This represents in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, this represents what's called the differential between Alma Discalia, a revealed world, where spirit, a level of things which are revealed, and the level of Alma Discasia, a higher concealed level. The idea of land represents the objects that we can see. The sea represents spiritual realms which are not so easily visible. depending on your neshama, depending on the root source of your neshama, and the holiness that your neshama exhibits. Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama is something which derives from Alma Discalio, the hidden world, a higher realm. A regular Jew, his neshama comes from Alma Discalio, from the revealed world. So Moshe's name reveals that he was taken out of the sea, represents a neshama that's rooted in the hidden world. Yet, even though his name is not mentioned in the parsha, and in fact, only the hidden aspect of Moshe, the hidden element of his name, that's hidden to begin with, his presence, that is in the parsha. What does that mean to us? If we think about Moshe Rabbeinu and his request that his name not be mentioned in the Torah on behalf of the Jewish nation, we can think how great and leadership qualities that Moshe Rabbeinu represented. Moshe Rabbeinu's request was that if Hashem would not forgive the Jewish nation, his name should be erased from the Torah. Now, let's think about who Moshe was. Moshe was the giver of the Torah, to the extent that the Torah is called under his name, Torah's Moshe. Moshe is synonymous with the Torah. In fact, the verse says, remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. But despite this, Moshe Rabbeinu was ready to give away his name, to take his name and let it be erased from the Torah, all for the sake of the Bnei Yisrael. And this was because, however great and however precious the Torah was to him, his connection and his love for the Jewish nation was even more precious. We see that Hashem himself represents this ideal as well. It says, the Medrash says, two things preceded the world, Torah and the Jewish people. The Medrash says, but we don't know which one came first. The Medrash concludes and says, it must be that the Jews came first, as evidenced by the fact that the Torah actually says, Daber B'nai Yisrael, speak to the speak to the B'nai Yisrael, command the B'nai Yisrael. So we see that embedded in the Torah is already the existence of B'nai Yisrael. This demonstrates that the Jewish nation is even higher than Torah, as the Torah exists only for the sake of allowing the Jewish nation to reach and to achieve their level of completeness. So, of course, Moshe was connected to the Torah. And the Torah, as we said before, was called Torah's Moshe. Nevertheless, the Bnei Yisrael are even more precious to Moshe Rabbeinu than the Torah. And when he witnessed, and when he saw, in next week's parsha was mentioned, when he witnessed the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf, doing Avodah Zorah against Hashem, the opposite of Torah, and the people were disconnecting themselves from Hashem, he was ready to have his name blotted out from the Torah, but as long as the Jewish nation could remain and could remain intact. So how does Moshe's request that his name be erased, blotted out. Does that mean that his own self was to come to an end? No, because Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded with Hashem to forgive the Bnei Yisrael, because this is what Moshe Rabbeinu actually totally stood for. The great leader of Bnei Yisrael stood for the whole idea of Yisrael and connecting to Yisrael. And so Moshe Rabbeinu understood that that the Torah is all for Bnei Yisrael, and therefore the Bnei Yisrael is even higher. So when we say that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is erased in this parsha, what actually does it mean? We have seen that Moshe's name is hidden in the Torah, and we see Moshe's name is referred to by virtue of the Pesukim. Moshe Rabbeinu, in fact, is called by Ata Tetzvaye, you shall. So Moshe Rabbeinu is mentioned, but not directly. So what does this mean that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned? It means, as we've said, his revealed name was erased, but his hidden name, his essence, his deepest part of him as leader of the Bnei Yisrael and his connection to the Bnei Yisrael, his innermost connection and inner being as Nossi, as the Prince of Israel, as the leader of the Israel, as the Rebbe of the whole Israel. That was very much there. And in fact, that connection was in fact his drive, his motivation for his request to save the Jewish people in a physical sense as well as a spiritual sense, because he understood that they would eventually do tshuva. So therefore, this idea that Moshe's name in a revealed sense is not there, but he is always present in a hidden sense, in a not revealed sense, shows us that Moshe Rabbeinu, even though physically not here, he's always with us. Meaning, in more concrete words, this means that Moshe Rabbeinu, or Moshe Rabbeinu's representative in every generation, the idea is Pashtusa de Moshe, the extension of Moshe that is in every leader, in every generation. It is always there, even though not necessarily in a revealed sense. Every single person has a level inside of himself that equates to Moshe Rabbeinu. And that level inside of himself always connects to the Jewish people and will even go to a level of Mesiras Nefesh for the Jewish people. That exists in a physical sense, with a leader in every generation, and every single person themselves has that spark of Moshe Rabbeinu within inside of themselves. And we don't even begin to understand how truly the Raya Mehemna, the true shepherd of Israel, cherishes every single Jew. And we see that clearly by Jewish people, that they have this level of Ahavas Yisrael for their fellow Jew, and they will go even beyond any measure to help another Jew. How much more so the leader of the generation sets himself aside in every way, even to the point where he sacrifices his connection to Torah by giving over himself to save a fellow Jew, both physically and spiritually. We saw in our generation that the Rebbe gave away of himself when to the Jewish nation. The Rebbe himself, we can see from his teachings, was able to achieve great lofty connections to Torah, great connections and great understandings of Torah. But the Rebbe gave away of himself and spent so much of his time with the Bnei Yisrael, teaching in a public fashion, on a private session, spending time with many Jews in yechidus, in private audiences, helping and assisting in whichever way he could, in the times of encouraging people to give tzedakah and giving brachas to them at the time when the aspect of dollars, when everybody passed by the Rebbe and the Rebbe gave them dollars and he gave them blessings for the purpose of giving tzedakah, where tzedakah is considered one of the general mitzvahs. So whether our leader is physically here, or whether we have the Moshe Rabbeinu of our generation in a spiritual sense, not revealed to us, like in this week's parsha, the true shepherd of Israel cherishes every single Jew and is willing and to do things for us, to save every single fellow Jew. And that the brachas come from those blessings affects many, many different people, as many of the stories of different things which happen to people and the good blessings which flow forth. Therefore, this whole idea of that the parsha not having Moshe Rabbeinu's explicit name is a teaching to us that a Moshe Rabbeinu, even in the hidden Chumash, is still connected with us. And this we can see even in the words of the parsha. We said that the pasuk starts off with Va'atzet Tzvaye, and we can interpret the Atzet Tzvaye as following: Va'atzet Tzvaye, Va'ato you Moshe Rabbeinu, Tzvaye. Although the literal translation means Tzvaye is to command, also has the idea of mitzvah, where mitzvah means to connect. So Va'atzet Tzvaye, the neshama from the realm of, as we said, Amud Discussia, from the higher realms, from the level of sea, Atzet Tzvaye, you connect, that Moshe Rabbeinu connects as Bnei Yisrael. He connects the Bnei Yisrael, and V'yikra Elecha Shemen Zayis, and then they should take to you. They bring from themselves, the Bnei Yisrael, they bring to themselves that special aspect of themselves, of the oil, and the oil is the oil Shemen Zach, which is Kosis Lameir, which is refined, which is beaten, that it is in a sense of bittul, in a sense of nullification, and that connects the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Bnei Yisrael, so that he can reveal and strengthen and be the Raya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd, the shepherd that feeds his flock, the Bnei Yisrael, faith, and brings them connecting to the apostle, connects to Lamoir, to the source, to the light, for lighting, and they will individually, La'alas Ner Tomid, they will be able to bring up the ner tomid, they will be able to bring up the idea of lighting up. They'll light up their own neshamas. They'll light themselves up, tomid, in a continual basis. So this is the teaching of the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu, in the revealed sense or in the hidden sense, connects to all the Jews, Bnei Yisrael, and connects them via Torah to the idea of menorah, the idea of light, so that they can light up their own worlds and lighten up the world around them, so that they become a light, a menorah to all the places around them, so they can elevate all the things around them and fulfill their achievement. And even if we don't have openly revealed Moshe Rabbeinu with us at this moment, nevertheless, just like in this parsha, he is hinted at, and he actually is there in the parsha, in a hidden sense. Moshe Rabbeinu and the Moshe Rabbeinu in every single person gives us the strength and connects us to Hashem himself, so that we can fulfill Hashem's desire to complete and make this place a better place for the ultimate of the revelation of all the light in the times of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Wishing all of you a fantastic week and beautiful Shabbos.